You know, there's one thing I always liked about Nagato. He was a realist. That's not to say I agree with him entirely, after all, he was a terrorist, but his views, when not taken to the same extremes he had, did make quite a bit of sense. Immanuel Kant, a German philosopher, believed that peace is an unnatural state for humanity, and I can't exactly say I disagree. For as many people that there are that fight, there are an equal amount of reasons, be it for justice, money, or even peace itself. St. Augustine was one of those who put together beliefs in how Christians in the 4th and 5th century should view war, also believing that peace was not something humanity could achieve so long as sin and evil remained within the world. My inner Yahiko is slightly upset about this view, but my inner Nagato agrees. Nagato believed that pain was the only way that peace could be achieved. Pain and fear. And while it's a very pessimistic worldview, it's not exactly wrong. Humanity has actually experienced an era very similar to this, the Cold War. Despite nuclear weapons being such a horrible power, we must give them due credit in saying that they both ended World War II and prevented a war between the West and East. These weapons prevented World War III, and that's the lesson I am certain that Nagato's characterization was pulled from. Being born in 1974, Masashi Kishimoto lived through the era of the Cold War and knew how the world experienced it. But sad as it is, that's the truth. Peace through love is far less feasible than peace through deterrence, and that is where both Yahiko and Nagato's views change. Yahiko is an idealist who believes that humans can and should have peace through love, and as wonderful as it would be, just as St. Augustine believed, so long as sin and evil exist in the world, so too will war. Nagato, on the other hand, was a realist, realizing that peace wasn't desired by everyone and that the way to keep people from going to war was to threaten it yourself, mutually assured destruction. The concept that prevented World War III. That's the same concept Nagato brings to the table with his beliefs. But much like Hot Cold Man in Metal Gear Solid, he plans to show the might he possesses. Tony Stark said it best in the first installment of the Iron Man series. Is it better to be feared or respected? Is it too much to ask for both? They say that the best weapon is the one you never have to fire. I respectfully disagree. I prefer the weapon you only have to fire once. That's how my dad did it, that's how America does it, and it's worked out pretty well so far. Find an excuse to let one of these off the chain, and I personally guarantee you the bad guys won't even want to come out of their caves. That's Nagato's belief, and it's a sound argument for peace. That's why he's one of my favorite villains, because arguably he's closer to an anti-hero who's merely fulfilling his dreams of peace no matter what. But of course, this doesn't mean we shouldn't attempt peace any other way. Yahiko and Naruto both are those who believe that love can save the world and that peace can be attained through love, and it's my belief and my greatest prayer that one day humanity can find and maintain the peace that Yahiko sought for so long. But that's enough out of me. I bet you didn't come here for a history lesson or an argument on the philosophy of peace and war. You came here to be entertained, so let the show begin. Please direct your gaze up at the moon and let the Amagi's infinite Tsukiyomi whisk you away to a world where Yahiko survived. Welcome to the Amagi. Before we begin, we publish a new video every day, so be sure to subscribe to our channel and ring the bell to get notified about our latest videos. We've also noticed that a lot of folks who watch our videos aren't actually subscribed to the channel. We know that YouTube is great at recommending you the stuff that you want to watch, but if you don't want to miss a video and if you want to support the channel, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Thanks so much. The Amagi's reach stretches beyond just this channel, so if you're a fan of us, please consider subscribing to our other channels and following us on all of our social media. Help us reach our goal of passing 100,000 followers on all of our accounts by the end of the year. Conan's form stood in the main hall, looking out of a window at the village hidden in the rain. Every time he gazed to the heavens, it seemed as if the skies, the angels above, wept upon this world. And why wouldn't they? Every day, the innocent died with the unjust. Pain had this day decided to do something uncharacteristic. After his conversation with Yahiko, Pain began to wonder if it truly was time to let go of the pain of the past. Perhaps try a new way to bring peace. But the world just kept disappointing him, over and over again, without fail. He had walked here, trudging through the rain, through the streets he had frequented as a child, thinking that a trip down memory lane might help him re-establish who Nagato was. what it was like to not be this weaponized version of himself, an extremist of peace. It was there that he found something that reminded him of pain. There was a child, a little girl in the streets, laying in the gutter, unable to move, barely conscious, her bones visible through her flesh. Starved, she couldn't even open her eyes. He lifted her up with the arms of Conan, knowing that at one time this had been himself. Looking down upon the little girl, he thought he glimpsed an image of Conan in her pale, sunken face. That little girl was currently in a bed in the building. Of course, she had died. He knew he couldn't save her from the beginning, but he didn't want her to suffer alone in that gutter. This little girl had known pain, and he sympathized. He hoped that maybe in giving her a warm bed to die in, she might just feel some semblance of peace. In keeping her warm, his hand in hers, maybe, just maybe, she wouldn't be scared. But no. As the Reaper entered the room, Nagato thought he caught a glimpse of it with his Rinnegan. Yet when he turned to look, there was nothing. He saw the girl crying, terror in her eyes, voice too weak to speak, only a breathy exclamation to be heard. "Please, I don't want to die." Nagato looked out over the village hidden in the rain, the body of Conan as his avatar. It truly was as if the angels themselves were weeping over this world. And this was why, if Nagato had any more tears left to shed, he would have. Within him he felt a melding cauldron of emotions. Disappointment, yet feeling as if he should expect no less of a world full of callous individuals. He was angry, wishing to lash out, to punish the village. For a moment he considered some form of judgment on this village, a blood payment to be made. But in the end, he let out a sigh and let all of his feelings go. This was the way of the world. The just died with the unjust, and those who had no protection, the weakest of us, fell to the rule of the jungle. The strong survive, the weak perish. The very system Nagato wanted to change showed up before his face and spat into it, showing him cruelty. He no longer wanted to try and change to fit Yahiko's ideals. Now was not the time to let the pain go. No. Pain was all around, and would remain all around. He was the embodiment of this world's pain. It was said that those bearing the Rinnegan were to be gods of creation or gods of destruction. They embodied the cycle of birth and rebirth, the samsara, hence the name of the dojutsu. And it was time for rebirth, and rebirth could not happen unless something died. Something born must perish to be reborn. This world needed to perish to be reborn as a new world, with a new order. Yahiko believed he could save this world, but salvaging it was almost impossible. He had been reminded of it. This world was a big mess, and now he had to clean it up, even if he had to do so by himself. It was then that Madara entered the room. He turned back to look at the man with the swirling mask. "Where is Yahiko?" Nagato asked, as if already knowing that Madara had something to do with this. Madara stood there. "You expect me to keep track of your brother? He's not my responsibility." Conan's form took a few steps closer to him in an intimidating fashion. "I know you and he had an issue. If he disappeared, then it most likely has to do with you. If you've hurt him, you will not enjoy the fate I will give you." Madara let out a groan of distaste. "You're always so dramatic. I have nothing to do with Yahiko. If he doesn't turn up, that's on him. But I'm certain he will, unless he's finally fed up with our idea of peace." Conan took a step back. "You had better pray." Madara raised his hands, as if attempting to get some unknown entity to take in the situation and be judge for them. "And here I came to deliver some fantastic news." Nagato raised a brow ever so slightly. Madara continued. "We've captured Han. He awaits you by the ghetto statue." Nagato sighed as if the change of subject left him feeling uncomfortable. "Take me to him." Pain followed Madara to the ghetto statue where, before it, on an altar, the bound and unconscious body of Han rested. The other Akatsuki members were surrounding the altar in a wide circle. Madara did not join the ranks as he preferred to remain unseen. Pain walked to Han. He placed his hand on the Jinchuriki and suddenly a red glow appeared, his tailed beast being pulled from him out of the mouth and eyes. Those standing around began to offer up their chakra as Nagato forced the beast into the statue. Pain looked upon the statue as one of the 9 eyes seemed to open. Silence passed for a few moments. He then spoke without turning. "Take the Jinchuriki and lay him to rest. And within my room, the child that has passed, lay her to rest as well." He turned and began to leave. Toby followed him off. "1 beast down, 8 to go." I already have the other members of the Akatsuki scouting them out. Konan's strides were brisk and sure, Nagato feeling a rush of confidence in his desires. All the while, the orange hair of Yahiko appeared. Pain stopped and looked at him. He looked back at Madara for a moment before returning his attention to Yahiko. Welcome back. Yahiko smiled. Pain passed by. Madara looked at the face of Yahiko and smiled beneath his mask, knowing that his Zetsu clone had fooled Pain. As he tried to walk by, however, a hand was held out to stop him from moving past. Suddenly, the air shifted as tension filled the room. Madara was startled. He looked to Yahiko, who looked to him and smiled. You expected me to be so casually defeated by your paper soldier. Did you even bother to check who was in the cell before you left? Madara was surprised. It seemed that when they sent the Zetsu to imprison Yahiko, that Yahiko had managed to get the better of Zetsu and imprison him instead. It was then that Madara knew his goose was got. Yahiko had the information. He had been assaulted. Madara knew that Pain would trust Yahiko no matter what. There was no way he wouldn't. He suddenly began checking through whatever cards he had left. He could not afford to lose Pain's cooperation. Currently, everything rides upon it. What can I do? Madara asked within his own mind. Kill him? No, Pain would notice. Kamui, if I manage to teleport Yahiko out without Pain knowing, I can replace him. I can still salvage this. But just as he prepared to use it, Yahiko spoke. Nagato, I have something important to tell you before this guy tries to kill me. Pain turned around to look. Damn it, Toby exclaimed within his mind. What was there to do now? Right before him, all of his time plotting. Every night he spent awake manipulating events. It was all going down the drain. He didn't have enough time to think this through. It was over. It was well and truly over. Yahiko continued. Madara is plotting against you and I have proof. Pain stepped forward. Proof. Yahiko nodded. He has an army laying in wait and he attacked me. Currently there's a being with my face locked up in a prison cell. He attempted to have me replaced because I overheard his conversation. Madara looked to Yahiko. Oh, how rich, he said, attempting to sow the seeds of doubt in Pain's mind, the only thing he could do right now. You truly dislike the way we're attempting to bring peace, but to actively sabotage your friend, that's not a low I ever expected from you, Yahiko. Yahiko looked back to Madara. It's not a lie and you know it. He looked back at Pain. Nagato, look into my eyes. I'm not lying to you. I have proof. I have a set of coordinates. If you don't believe me, go to those coordinates and see for yourself. He gives Pain a slip of paper with numbers written on them. Pain looks at them before looking up at Yahiko again. I will investigate this. Pain turned to walk away. Yahiko called out, You gotta do it now, or Toby will move everything and destroy the evidence. Pain looked back. I will. I seek a map to tell the coordinates with. Until then, Madara, do not leave my sight. If you flee, I will take it to mean that you're guilty. Madara stepped forward. I have nothing to hide, Pain. He walked beside Pain and looked back at Yahiko. Unbeknownst to Yahiko, Black Zetsu had heard it all and knew that there was no time to waste. Returning to the base, Zetsu quickly set off the failsafe, a bomb that would obliterate the entirety of the mountain's graveyard, save the hidden area where the Zetsu were being stored. It would be covered but not destroyed. A moment later, Pain, Yahiko, and Madara appear. Madara looks around. See, there's nothing here. Yahiko looks around. That's because you destroyed it. It's here. You can even see the dust coming off the newly fallen rubble. Madara scoffed. A cave-in. That's a natural occurrence. No proof of anything. Yahiko raised his finger to put it into Madara's face and tell him off, but before he could, Pain stopped them. Yahiko turned to Pain. Nagato, you've got to believe me. Madara looked to Pain. He's always stood against our ideals. His view of peace is too weak to be attained. He's attempting to sabotage you because he's too scared to take the necessary steps. Yahiko turned back to Pain and gripped him by the collar of his cloak. Nagato, listen, you've got to believe me. I will admit I don't like your way of doing things, and even to a point I've considered sabotaging you, but I'm telling you the truth. It was here, and Madara wants to overthrow you. You've got to believe me. I wouldn't lie about your safety. You're my brother. We grew up together. We both loved Konan. You know me. I swear on Conan's grave, it was here. Pain looked into Yahiko's eyes and saw the conviction within. He turned to Madara. Your assistance is no longer required. He took a step toward Madara, but Madara disappeared into his Kamui dimension. Yahiko sighed in relief. Pain turned back toward him. I believe you, but do not think that this changes anything. I will still awaken the Ten Tails and bring peace to this world through Pain. Yahiko hated that, but he was simply glad that Nagato was safe for now. He could try to change his mind again later. Right now, what was most important was ensuring that he was safe. and that meant expelling Madara and Zetsu from the ranks of the Akatsuki. The issue with that was the current Akatsuki was formed by Tobi, so once he and Zetsu were gone, so were they. The Akatsuki seemed fairly small thereafter. This hardly changed anything. Nagato simply believed that he and Yahiko could and would pick up the slack. But this is not how the story ends. Tobi and his Akatsuki splinter group would not remain inactive forever. At first, it seemed they might, but a single interaction changed that. Tobi stood on a tree, overlooking the vast forest that seemed to stretch on as far as the eye could see. He let out a sigh as he was unsure what to do next. From behind, Zetsu appeared. "That did not go according to plan." Tobi shook his head. "We need those Rinnegan. Without them, we cannot hope to finish our Eye of the Moon plan." Zetsu sat there for a time. "Perhaps we don't." Tobi turned to look back at Zetsu. "Explain." "I have told you how the Rinnegan is created, have I not?" Tobi thought about it. Zetsu continued. "The Sage of Six Paths was the one who bore the Rinnegan, but it can be awakened through the mixing of chakra. The sage's sons, Indra and Ashura, continually reincarnate. If Indra and Ashura's chakra mix, the Sage of Six Paths chakra is created, and a new Rinnegan awakens. As Indra, Madara simply added the genetic material of Ashura, the one known as Hashirama Senju, and it created Six Paths chakra within him, awakening his Rinnegan." Tobi stood there. "What does this have to do with anything? I do not have access to Madara's cells like I do Hashirama's." Zetsu explained. "Madara was but one reincarnation among many. The same is true of Ashura and Hashirama. With Madara's death, another will soon be born to carry his chakra." "How do you know this?" Tobi asked. Zetsu's evil smile began to crawl up his face. "I am the essence of Madara's will made incarnate to guide you. I know my master and where and when he will be born. It's up to you to do as you will with him." Tobi thought about it. "Fair. What do you propose?" And so time passed. Tobi knew that Nagato would stop at nothing to retrieve the Ten Tails, but he could not let this occur. He had to keep the Ten Tails out of Nagato's hands just long enough. He knew that the Akatsuki, as it stood, could not stand up against the might of the Rinnegan, but it was not impossible to stall. He had one thing Pain did not have: connections. He would use his connections to find where the current Jinchuriki were, and instead of capturing them, he would attempt to have them assassinated. The death of a Jinchuriki could be covered up. After all, most villages hated their Jinchuriki, and by killing them, he would set Pain back, keeping the tailed beasts from respawning for quite some time. And without the tailed beasts, Nagato could not complete the plan first. All the while, Black Zetsu kept his eyes on Konoha. "Soon," he thought to himself, "soon Indra will be reborn, and when he is, we may proceed." And as this struggle between the two factions of the Akatsuki, Daybreak and Nightfall as they came to be known, Akatsuki and Nichibotsu, the sound of a baby's crying set alight the fire of the war anew. Tobi wandered the streets of Konoha. The sweltering heat of the summer made his long cloak feel like a steam house. Outside of the hospital, he knew that the babe had been born. According to Zetsu, it was the child of Fugaku and Makoto Uchiha, the next Madara. The plan was simple: a genjutsu on a nurse and the retrieval of a babe. He stood outside as the nurse he had chosen began to make her way to the nursery where the child named Sasuke awaited. It wasn't like anyone expected this, nor would anyone really care save Makoto and Fugaku. The nurse would wheel off the baby inconspicuously and eventually pick it up and bring it to the exit of the hospital, where she would present it to Tobi. Tobi would then free her from the genjutsu, causing her to pass out. It was as simple as that, in and out. Utilizing his Kamui, he took the infant with him. He eventually returned to Zetsu in their new base, where everything had been moved. "I have the child." Zetsu would look upon it and smile. "Very good. Now, time to begin the procedure." The dark shadow of a man lifted a scalpel. This was a bit more than Tobi was truly comfortable with, but he remembered why he was doing this. "Will it truly work?" Even after introducing Hashirama's cell to his body, it took Madara decades to awaken his Rinnegan. Zetsu nodded to him. "Indeed it did, but he only took a small portion of Hashirama's cells at an old age. I plan to replace 50% of this child's body with Hashirama Senju's DNA. And at such an early moment in development, as the baby grows, so too shall the cells. I predict it will awaken the Rinnegan no less than 6 years from now." Tobi turned away as Zetsu began to work. When he was done, Tobi got to see the child. It was kept under anesthesia for most of the healing process, a close eye kept on it to ensure that it didn't die. Tobi remembered viewing it during that time. Its entire right side was made of the same pale substance as his own. It was as if Zetsu were mocking Toby by replicating his wounds on this child. "We must raise it until it develops the Rinnegan," Toby said to Zetsu. Zetsu nodded, and so they did. Toby would take responsibility for the child's safety and would attempt to keep it entertained as Zetsu continued their work. The child had a beaming smile, not too dissimilar from his own at a young age. He raised his own hand and looked at the pale skin, lacking pigmentation. The child, Sasuke, would raise his own hand and press it against Toby's, showing that they were the same. And as the child grew, its joyous mentality was nearly infectious. Was this what Madara was before the world corrupted him, Toby would wonder? He would attempt to indoctrinate Sasuke with his beliefs, and Sasuke would take to them, but his own smile had gone untainted as he knew he wanted to do what was best for the world. His smile was a dangerous thing. Sasuke needed to know what the world was like, how cruel it could be. He needed to turn that overabundance of love into pure, unabating hatred. But every time he attempted to show him that, Toby would stop. In the darkness where Toby lived, no light shined down from the surface. He was starved of kindness and love, and yet this child appeared in his life. "Are you going to teach me something more, Papa?" the child would ask as Toby entered the room. Toby would slowly remove his mask for the first time. He had never shown Sasuke his face. At first, it was out of secrecy, and then as he warmed to the child, it was out of fear that Sasuke might be terrified of him. But now he just wanted to see Sasuke with his own eyes, and to be seen as he truly was by Sasuke. Sasuke looked at him curiously as he removed his mask, the child's eyes widening in horror. Toby nodded. "This is what the world does to you, Sasuke. This is why we're doing this. I'm covered in so many scars, and they'll never heal. The world's hurt me bad, Sasuke, and I don't want it to hurt you or anyone else." To his surprise, though, Sasuke approached him and put his hands upon Obito's face. "Daddy's been hurt." Sasuke would kiss Obito's scarred cheek. "I want to heal you." Obito was startled by this reaction. Such purity, such innocence. He knew he was in too deep. He knew that Sasuke would be useless to them like this. He said he wanted to help the world, but could he actually go through with this? What happened when someone stood against him, told him he was wrong? Would he cave? He needed to break Sasuke from this mentality, but it felt impossibly hard. He couldn't let this child lose the sparkle in his eye, this innocence. For a time, Toby wished to destroy it, but now all he could think of was protecting it. In his younger years, he had dreamed of the children he and Rin would have, but upon her death, he knew that such a thing had become impossible. But now, as this child was in his arms, he felt that old spark come back to life. It was as if Rin were there once more. He couldn't let that go. One night, however, Obito was spending time with Sasuke, reading him stories, playing games, solving puzzles, coloring, just having a grand old time. Sasuke then doubled over. Obito noticed this and came to him. "Sasuke." The boy gripped his head. Papa, it hurts." Obito looked at him, his hands hovering around Sasuke as if he wanted to hug the child but was too scared to, afraid that it might cause him more pain. "Papa, my head, it hurts so bad. Help me, help me." Obito wasn't sure what to do. Sasuke began to fall forward. Obito caught Sasuke and lifted him into his arms. He carried him to his bedroom and laid the child down on the bed. Sasuke wept, gripping his head. Obito called for Zetsu. A black, amalgamous mass formed in the center of the room and rose to full height. "It appears to be awakening. His Rinnegan." Suddenly, Sasuke's back arched as he let out a cry. His eyes opened as they became rippling circles from the centermost part of the eye to the outermost. He fell back, just breathing. Obito looked at him. Sasuke. Sasuke looked at him for a moment. "Papa." He then passed out. Obito took a breath. It seemed like the worst was behind them. At that moment, he noticed the black hand of Zetsu inching ever so close to the face of Sasuke. He gripped it. "What are you doing?" Zetsu looked at Obito, his expression having not changed at all. "I'm taking the Rinnegan, or did you forget that this is why we brought the child here?" Toby continued to hold the hand. "I think this boy could be more used to us alive. There's no need to harvest the Rinnegan." "There is a need," Zetsu said. "You think I've not seen you and this child together? You love him, and love is a dangerous emotion to our mission. We kidnapped this child to force him to awaken the Rinnegan, and now that we have, he will give it to us." Obito stood and sighed, letting go of Zetsu's arm. "I'm sorry. You're right." Zetsu then began to move closer to Sasuke's Rinnegan. Suddenly, Obito turned around and struck Zetsu down. "You're right. I do love Sasuke, and I'm not going to let you or anyone hurt him." Zetsu was startled, but a part of him wasn't actually surprised. "Fool. I didn't think you'd be willing to give up everything for this boy." Obito knelt down to the dying creature. "Who said I gave anything up? What was yours and my plan will now simply be mine and his. You are not needed anymore." Zetsu looked at him with a single fiery glare. "Bastard." Obito returned this glare with a fireball jutsu, burning the remnants of Zetsu away. He then turned to Sasuke with a sigh. "You and me, that's all we need, just us. We'll take the 9 tails and every other tailed beast, and we will complete our plan, together." All the while, Pain waits patiently. He receives word that one of the tailed beasts have regenerated. It seems that the hunt is once more in full force. And I think it's best to stop the chapter here for now. I hope you all enjoyed it. This part was a long time coming. I enjoyed exploring this with ya. I just sort of sat back and let the story evolve on its own, and this is what came from it. I hope you liked it. If you did, let me know in the comments below what your favorite part was and what you might like to see in the future. Or perhaps you have a criticism that you would like to share. Something maybe you wanted to happen differently. I'm open to that too. I love getting feedback. Helps me improve in the future. Anyway, until next time, peace out.
Did you enjoy our video? Well, then be sure to check out these other great videos from the Amagi, and make sure to subscribe and ring the bell to get notified about our latest videos.